From district icons to people whose longtime loyal service to the Plymouth Canton Community Schools made the district what it is today. These are the stories of the people of PCCS. It's My P-CCS Life on 88.1 The Park.
Hello, PCCS, and welcome to My P-CCS Life. Our guest for this debut edition is someone very familiar to our school district and community, Dr. Jim Burt. Dr. Burt's long and very storied history began in our community when he was hired as a teacher at Miller Elementary School in 1972. He then served as an assistant principal at Isbister Elementary starting in 1979, followed by stays at Field, Pioneer, and East. He took over as principal at Allen Elementary School from 1986 to 1999, became the Erickson Elementary principal from 1999 to 2006, and the position he is most known for to many, principal at Workman Elementary School from 2006 to 2020. Dr. Burt, I guess that's our show for the day.
Thank you.
It took that long to get through all your credentials with the district.
You've tapped into everything I know about things today anyway, so thank you.
Welcome to this first edition of My P-CCS Life. We can't think of a better guest to come and talk about your history with the district. Dr. Burt, why education?
So I'm at University of Michigan in the late 60s, and maybe like a lot of other people, I'm trying to figure out what my life is going to be like. And a friend of mine was working at an elementary school playground near where I was living, and he said, we're looking for another person to do noontime supervision for kids. So I took that job, and from there I just realized that this is the right spot for me to be.
Was that your sort of first experience in the joy of working with young people? Like, did you have any experiences before that? College does seem like an awfully late time to kind of have that first buzz from it.
Yeah, I was probably on a professional graduate PhD track at some point in time, so I wasn't really thinking about whether or not I might want to work with kids.
What was it about working with young people that was so inspiring to you?
Well, I would say probably the same thing that was inspiring to me for all the time that has been there. Look, you cannot help but not be uplifted by the energy of young children. And when I'm starting to work with them, this is recess for them, so I'm not interfering with their classes. Look, I'm just playing football with kids and those kind of things. I mean, who couldn't connect with that energy at that time of day for kids? And kids, I found kids and they found me, which was important for my decision making as well.
So did that result in a quick pivot in terms of what you were studying? Did you then take on an education track?
Yeah, it didn't take long for me after that. That was my sophomore year. That didn't take long for me to jump into that track. That just seemed like it was the right thing to do at that point in time.
What year did you graduate from U of M?
72.
Tell me about the process of getting your first job.
Yeah, that's an interesting story. I'm student teaching at a school in Ann Arbor. I'm in the teacher's lounge one day, and there's a flyer on the desk that talks about an open British primary classroom workshop happening in Plymouth, and this is the summer of 72. I was interested in that topic at that point in time. So I decided to sign up for this, but I didn't have a car at this point in time. I said, I really want to do this. So my friend gave me a ride to Isbister, where this was happening, with the idea that I thought I could find a ride home. I connected with Shirley Spanning, who was the principal, going into the year that Miller was opening, and other people there, and there was a spot for me, and she hired me.
What did you know about Plymouth or Canton at the time?
I didn't.
Nothing?
I was looking for a job at that point in time.
Where did you grow up?
Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Different side of the state, different culture?
Yeah, Ann Arbor brought me to this side of the state, to school, and then I just decided I want to stay here. I didn't look anyplace else other than the Metro Detroit area or Ann Arbor area.
What were your early impressions of the community, of the Plymouth Canton community? Because you knew Michigan, but you didn't know a lot about even this side of the state.
Well, I didn't. I didn't know parents very well. I didn't know kids very well when I'm starting here. But from year one, and I would say this is true through the end of my career, parents wanted the same thing for their kids. They want what's best for their kids. They supported schools. They supported my work, even though I wasn't sure that I knew what I was doing. But they thought I knew what I was doing.
I think a common theme on this show is going to be that none of us knew what we were doing when we first started in education.
Sometimes during that first year, I wasn't sure I was going to make it or not. People supported me, and including parents supported me, and that was a boost. If your boss thinks you've got some potential here, your colleagues do, your parents are supporting you, that made a huge difference for me. Even though when I didn't necessarily believe in myself, other people thought I had something going for me.
As a fellow educator and teacher who also had a first year in a classroom, I still remember so much about my first year. I'm imagining you do too. I mean, there's something about that first year that's really special.
I wanted to be successsul, and I knew I needed to work hard in order to do that. And look, when you fall in love with kids early on, then you want to work on their behalf as well.
With that brand newness in mind, what are some of your favorite memories of those first days with PCCS?
In a nutshell, what have I gotten myself into here? I didn't necessarily mean like not the community, but I was a little bit cocky at that point in time. I thought I knew more than I did. Humility finds you fairly quickly when you're in that kind of spot. People were supporting me. Parents were supporting me. That was all I needed to get my legs on the ground and start believing in myself.
I'm always fascinated by what I would refer to as like graduating classes of employees. Yeah. Is there anybody that you came in with that you had longevity with throughout the rest of your career in that 1972 class?
Here's the most influential person for me, and that was Shirley Spaniel. She was the principal at that school. And I worked with her during those early years, and I wasn't seeking an administrative position in my 7th year of my career. But this job at Isbister opened up, and she said to me, the HR person, I want you to apply for this job. She saw something in me that I didn't see in myself.
You know, you're definitely known for your longevity in the district. I mean, you did have relatively long stays.
Yeah.
You know, Alan for 13 years, your stays at Erickson and Workman were both longer than a lot of other principals. But those early years, you skipped around buildings quite a bit. You know, from Miller to Isbister to Field to Pioneer to East. I know that's a common experience for a lot of leaders in our district. What did it mean to you to get all these different looks?
I think every time that I work with somebody, I would say to myself, what is it about the strengths of this person that I want to incorporate into my own leadership work? And what are those things about this person I want to make sure that I'm not doing? In my first job, I learned a lot about teaching and learning, but not about how to treat people. In my second job, I learned a lot about relationship building and the importance of that. I wasn't working with somebody who was super focused on teaching and learning, so I feel like I was paying attention to what was happening around me and trying to form who I was and my own leadership skills based on what I was seeing. And also, I'm working with different teachers, different personalities, different strengths, understand what it was like for me to be a supervisor, a supporter of people, how to help people with problems they had, challenges they had, how to help them kind of move on to better spots in their career.
For those of us that have been with the district for, you know, a relatively long period of time, but not as long as you, we kind of put you in the category of Lee Harrison, Jerry Meyer, ironically, these positions these people that have all retired rather recently. I'm thinking that you built some relationships over time with fellow principals that were very valuable, and you must have relied heavily on some of those relationships with your colleagues.
I did. Interestingly, I'm sorry that I missed out on some of what Zoom meeting and COVID brought, because prior to that time, I would meet maybe twice a month with colleagues, and those would be kind of business meetings, and that would be about it. Or in the early part of COVID, when I was still here, I saw the growing power of being connected with colleagues on a daily basis. But look, you can't work for someplace for a long time without building some friendship, without having some friends, without finding people who were friends with you, or also people who I didn't necessarily want to be friends with them, but I certainly wanted to tap into what their knowledge was about working.
Tell me about some of those relationships, because, you know, all educators are going to say, oh, you know, we didn't have favorites and we don't want to name names, but now is your time to name names. I mean, who were some people that along the way at all phases really had an impact on you that you built a strong relationship with?
Lee Harrison, Kevin Learned, Amy Bell, Lisa Johnston. Those are more current people. Dave Farquharson from the past, Larry Miller from the past, Sam Baresi from the past. And those are people I've had friendships with, I'm still in contact with.
What's the common thread amongst all of those?
You think a lot alike about what's teaching and learning and what's right. I'll try to say this with that tongue in my cheek here. Some of it is you've survived some of the same things together with leadership in the district.
A shared sense of humor is always important.
For sure.
That was an important part of, I think, all of us getting to know you. You had to learn Dr. Burt's sense of humor, and once you did, you were in good shape.
Yeah, I think it was an asset for me.
I think it has to be.
Sure.
Tell me a little bit about Lee Harrison, because, you know, we're going to have him in, of course.
Sure.
And I'm going to ask him the same question about you. So what was that connection all about?
I never had an opportunity to work directly with him, but over time, you just find out people who have similar ways of looking at things that you do, people who have same interests that you do. Some friendships just happen, friendships that came outside of school. Lee is a great friend of mine now. I appreciate him so much. He and I have had some recent camping, paddling excursions together. That's the kind of friendship it is for me. I'll say also, with tongue in my cheek, over the years, sometimes when a colleague would talk, I would do whatever the equivalent was of checking my text to see whatever might be there. But when Lee Harrison talked, you raised your head to see what he's saying. Lee had a perspective that was always helpful for the group. It was always about, here's what I think is best for the kids in my school, for the teachers in my school, parents. You paid attention to what Lee Harrison said.
Let's talk about teachers. With your vast experience as a building level administrator, along the way you must have formed kind of your vision for what the perfect teacher is. What's the perfect PCCS teacher?
Let me start by talking about interviewing a little bit, which is your first entry to find the perfect person. When somebody's interviewed with me, I am listening only in part to the answers to their questions about the topic that was asked of them, about reading or whatever. But mainly I'm listening to what their heart tells me about what's in their heart about kids. Because I always thought I could help a person what the heart was in the right place to be a better instructor. But I couldn't take somebody who's a good instructor to embrace kids. Look, the ideal teacher right here is somebody who is kid first. I'm here today to do the very best that I can for kids. The kids who are easy to work with, the very best for the kids who are not. I'm here to be a good colleague, be a contributor to the overall part of the school, working all the time to be a better teacher.
We will definitely have listeners who have warm feelings about Allen, especially since that's a school that has been repurposed into a different role than
Sure.
what you saw it. Tell me about your years at Allen.
Let me back up to Miller because I have a couple interesting things to say about that.
Sure.
About these are 1972 things about. When I started Miller, at this point in time, if you're a child who lives south of Hanford, west of Lotz, north of Michigan Avenue, east of Beck Road, you went to Miller School.
Wow.
That's maybe 6 square miles.
It shows you how much Canton has changed
Sure it
over
has.
time.
Shortly after that, Miller was outgrown, and there was a central elementary school. There was an east elementary school. There were maybe 5 or 6 classes. In 76, Hulsing, Field Erickson opened. And when I'm teaching at Miller, there isn't a curriculum. There isn't a curriculum in this district until somewhere in the late 70s. I could teach anything I wanted to. I could teach reading, math, however I wanted to. That was a gift for me. Special ed laws in 1972 were 5 or 6 years from, I don't remember when M-step testing, but it wasn't in 1972.
Correct. When you get to Allen, that's your first principal
Yeah, it is.
gig. What's it like to make that jump from AP to principal?
Well, I entered with plenty of enthusiasm. That's for sure. I thought I'd been ready for my own building for some time before that, but my bosses did not see it that way. I would say one of the things that was really exciting for me is that prior to this time, the TAG program was at 3 sites, and it came together all at Allen that year. I was intent upon doing what I thought I needed to make sure that that group that had been quite scattered came together collectively. I thought I'd ask some right questions about what I thought to find out what was happening in that building, and I thought I had some things that needed to work on around the instructional program. I also spent that first year trying to emerge from the shadow of Tom Workman, who had been there for a long time, who was beloved. He'd been in that building for a long time. And finally, near the end of the year, people stopped saying, well, that's not the way Tom Workman did it. But anyway, that's the first year that I'm in a building of my own, where there are people that are really dedicated to kids. I'm not cleaning up a mess, so to speak. I'm jumping into people that I see they're there to do, they want to do the right thing. I felt I could jump into trying to help us move ahead with curriculum things. And it's different. When you're working for somebody, the buck doesn't stop on your desk. And when you're the boss of the building, then it does. That took a little bit to get used to. I didn't leave Allen because I wasn't happy there. I left because I needed a new challenge for myself. My 2 youngest kids were part of the TAG program from 3rd grade through 5th grade. It was just astoundingly good for me to be able to see my kids every day at school. Also during Allen years, computer labs are opening up, and that meant that you jumped into a lab with a floppy disk and we're playing Oregon Trail and those kind of things. That was the original part of what computer labs look like.
In perfect radio fashion, you did the segue for me.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about TAG in relation to the only role that's more important for your PCCS life than your career role, which is your role as a parent. So you're also a PCCS parent. Tell me about your experiences
I
there.
had 5 kids who grew up in this district who graduated from Canton and were well served by teachers for all those years. Were well served by them. My wife taught at Lowell and Salem for a long time. We had jobs that we could count on, medical benefits that we could count on. I was enormously grateful for all of those things. Enormously grateful for that.
Do you have any specific stories or memories about being principal dad? Because those 2 roles are tough to simultaneously make work, but clearly you did in some ways.
So let me back up a little bit, because when I was at Pioneer as AP, my 2 oldest kids were there. I said to my daughter, I want to try to be cool about this. I know this might be a bit awkward for you, that I'm here, I'm the assistant principal, you're her, I'm going to try to stay out of your way. Well, that was my plan, but it wasn't my daughter's plan. She sought me out at every opportunity. I can remember her hanging her head out the bus window saying, bye, Dad, I'll see you in a little while. Those kind of things. So I also had to suspend 2 boys who got in a fight over my daughter at one point in time as well. So
Oh, really?
I also had to suspend my son who got in a fight with somebody, but let me just say he got in a fight with somebody who had it coming. So I knew from that the principal role for me and the dad role for me were different. And I said, look, I understand that this circumstance came up, and I feel that was the right thing you need to do about it. So when my kids are at Allen, look, I got to see them every day. I saw who their friends were. I saw what they were doing at lunch, who they were playing with. I was in class. I got to walk in class and see what my kids are doing. I mean, what a gift that was for me to see my kids through the filter of my own eyes, not through the filter of whatever kids might tell you when they got home from school.
It's a huge gift, especially, the demands of being a building principal. I think it's important for our community to recognize that our community sees a very small percentage of what the building leader actually does.
You're right.
It's a lot of time. It's a lot of time away from family. So let's shift to, again, the position that so many know you for, which is leading Workman Elementary School. And that's leading the school from the very beginning.
Yeah,
right?
from the very beginning, yeah.
You were the only Workman principal for 14 years.
Yeah, also let me say that of all the jobs I've described to you that I've had here, Workman was the only time I got a job in this district based on an interview. That's how kind of loose things were. Usually my boss would just say, hey, this is where you're moving right now. But the Workman community wanted the right person for that job. So I was now it's an easy 2 rounds of interviewing. I felt that was good for me for people to get to know who I might be, for me to put my ear a little bit on the ground for what people might be expecting from a brand new school. People were hungry in that part of the community for a neighborhood school. Those kids were at Miller, they were at Isbister, they were at Hulsing. They were hungry for their own school. I wanted people to, whatever their expectations might be, I wanted them to feel that I was working hard to try to make sure they were being met.
Well, a huge part of the story of our community is the growth and development of Southwest Canton.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
It is.
Nobody saw it more closely than you.
Actually, I was living in Cherry Hill Village at the time when that school opened as well. So,
oh, were you?
Yeah, that was an interesting perspective for me as well.
Not just opening a school, which I think is challenging for anybody. A lot of our school leaders who have done that will tell you that that's unlike any other experience. But to do it in that area of the community, which was growing so much and so rapidly, and not just growing in numbers, but growing in diversity.
I decided one way I might want to connect with the community was to invite people to come over and construct a playground for primary 8th grade kids. 50 people showed up that morning to build. People were eager for that. When I said, can you, if you're interested in helping me look at a PTO, 35, 40 people showed up for that meeting. I was thrilled that people accepted my invitation to connect with that school. Thrilled about that.
How did you see PCCS change just in the 14 years you were at Workman? Because 2006 to 2020, a lot of things happening there that impact education.
Well, first of all, I would say heading into 2005 or thereabouts, the shifting of the diversity of our school population was a drift. After that point in time, it became a wave. There were increasingly saw that show up at school every year. It was kind of surprising to me actually how diverse that school was getting. I like to think that the school had something to do with people moving there. When everybody moves any place, they want to. The right thing is to find out something about the school, which would have been Pioneer at the time as well, and decide if this is where I want to find a house. I feel like I've got a lot of feedback during that time as the community was growing that we are here in part because of the reputation the school has in the community.
A significant part of that reputation is this word we keep coming back to, which is diversity. Much more than a word, it's an idea, it's a culture. How does a growing diverse community, because you mentioned at the beginning of your experience at Miller, this community was not diverse.
Yeah.
It's grown tremendously, and no better place shows that than Workman. But how does our now diverse community, how does that change and improve the educational experience for our students and families?
Schools have become a bit of a microcosm for the changing in our society as well. So when I'm working with young kids, I am thrilled that they have an opportunity to be in class all day and on the playground with kids who don't look like them, who don't necessarily come from the same background that they have.
You've impacted countless young people and families throughout our community, our entire community, not just the Workman community. How would you want people to answer the question, who is Dr. Jim Burt?
He created a great learning environment, a great culture for the school that my kids went to. I thought my kids thrived when they were at the schools that he was at. I knew if I needed something from that school that I could call him, and he would address that in a way that I hoped somebody might. I think that he knew my kids. I think he made an attempt to know my family as well.
The decision to retire is a significant one. It's one that many of us have never had to make.
Sure.
So it's hard to imagine, especially for someone like you who's a born leader and really someone who clearly enjoyed the work. So take me to that decision. In June of 2020, there's a lot going on, not just in PCCS, but in the world. So it was an interesting time.
COVID didn't have anything to do with my decision to retire. Some people asked me that, but it didn't. I worked for the school district for 47 years. And at some point in time here, maybe there was a time when I said, look, I can't imagine retiring here. But at some point in time, and I think this is a creep that everybody has, that you accept that there's more to life than just working. That there's not an infinite amount of time for you to do some other things. So that was a creep that just sort of worked in for me like it does for everybody else.
And after 47 years in our community, now you're going to take your experiences to a brand new place. You're headed to Denver, Colorado.
Yeah, 2 of my kids live there. They live down the street from each other now, so it's a great opportunity for me to go someplace else. But I will tell you, over the last 2 years, I've missed working with kids so much. I feel like those opportunities are waiting for me when I get there to find some way for me to connect with kids again. I feel like my work with kids is unfinished.
I can't picture you golfing every day.
No, that's just not me. For the longest time, I felt work was, in addition to being a dad, was the purpose in my life. But I'm sort of missing that purpose right now, and my purpose is to find a way to connect with kids again.
So, Dr. Jim Burt, why PCCS? Why was PCCS right for you?
When I got hired, it was the right for me because they offered me my first job. But when I was here, I realized that I was in a spot where I was in a job that I loved. People were supporting my work. I was happy here. I was really happy working here. There wasn't any reason for me to think about going someplace else. There wasn't anything that I was unhappy about. I felt my career was thriving. I felt my relationships were thriving. I felt like in part like I was growing, at the district was growing, that I was growing as well. Felt like this is the right place for me to be growing into all that. This community and all the component parts of that, professional and personal, supported my life for a long time.
Dr. Burt, it's truly been a pleasure speaking with you today. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Nick Brandon, and you've been listening to My P-CCS Life on 88.1 The Park with former PCCS principal, Dr. Jim Burt. My P-CCS Life airs live on 88.1 The Park on the first Friday of every month. You can find past episodes of the program on the podcast page of 881thepark.com and on the official PCCS YouTube channel. Thanks for being with us, and good evening.